Go ahead.
We know.
Okay, welcome to St. Louis. How many of you are new to the area? Like everyone is anyone from here? Are living here? Okay, cool. So some familiar people. I'm Rob Santos. Thank you so much for having me over to speak at this event. It really blew my mind that there was a Myst event, one that travels going around, especially given how much Myst has influenced the work I do, and just the memories I have as a child playing Myst for the first time, and that slowly leading up to a career making games. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm mainly going to focus on talking about making games in general. So this is the Learn to Make Games talk. This is targeted at absolute beginners. Has anyone in here made a game before? Okay, so a few. It would have been a little weird if everyone had raised their hand. This conversation is not calibrated at all. How many of you are interested in getting into making games? A few? Okay. I have two main objectives with this talk. The first one is I am going to convince you that you can make games. When I first played Myst, and I was a little late to the party because my family just refused to buy a computer until much later. They kind of have that mindset that as soon as you buy it, it's out of date, so why buy one in the first place? So it was like 2002 by the time my family got their first computer at home. So the times I got to see Myst was mainly on friends' computers beforehand, and then I didn't get my own copy until around like 2003, so I was really late to the party as far as Myst design goes. And so for the longest time, like I would just enjoy games, and it didn't really cross my mind that this was something you could make. Then the second point of this talk is I'm going to convince you that you should make games. The games are not just some diversion, they're not just some throwaway form of entertainment. Games are actually good for your psychology, they are good for your health. In many ways, they are good for society in terms of the storytelling and other things that can happen. So these are the two things I hope you'll keep in mind. For these two objectives, though, the specific questions or topics I'm going to approach is why make games? If I'm saying that you can and that you should, there's going to be a big why. And so I'm going to go very briefly into what it is I do and why I think that matters. We're going to try to make a quick game, and I mean really quick, because I have less than an hour at this point. And so I'm kind of used to this from the classroom setting, where you think you have the full class period to do something, and then everything else goes wrong. So we'll see what we can fit in. We'll do something basic just to show you what it's like. And then suppose I have convinced you that you should get into making games. Then I want to point you to more resources so you can do it ongoing, or maybe as a hobby, or as a side project. So the first question, why make games? Let me tell you a little bit about the kinds of games I make and the work I do. So Elliot mentioned that I teach, but I also make games. And so this is one of the games I made. This one was targeted especially towards young people in schools. This was Adventure Time Game Wizard. So how many of you know Adventure Time, the Cartoon Network show? Good chunk of you. So this is a game about making games. It's pretty meta. It's especially for kids because the idea is that you get this grid paper and you draw on it. You draw kind of like a classic Mario level, and you scan it with the camera on your iPad, and it turns into a Mario-like game that you can play. And the big reason that this was compelling to me, as a project I would want to do, is that look at children's eyes when they realize that something they drew on paper can actually come alive and move around. Another game I helped with, and all these are most of these are collaborations, because it's really hard for one person to make a game by themselves. Most things, it's a team effort, kind of like the games are. This is Hive Jump. Came out on PC. I helped with the Wii U version, if anyone knows what a Wii U was. This is a 4-player cooperative in a Starship Troopers-ish, blow up the bug Space Marine kind of game. And a big genre that I like to work in is the couch co-op. I miss those days when you would actually sit with your friends, play a game together. You can actually hear each other. If your friend does something stupid, you can smack them in the head. I miss that physicality. So a lot of the games I do, they're cooperative. They're meant to be played together. But it's not all about new tech. It's not all about the latest Nintendo or the latest graphics card. I made a Nintendo game before. I made Flappy Bird for the NES. I know about the schematics for how those chips work, read some tutorials. The tutorial I read was written by a 16-year-old, by the way. He was not shy about mentioning that. Still, part of my point is, I told you, you can make games. If a 16-year-old can teach me how to program a console that came out 20 years before this kid was born, I think it's within your reach to get into making games. And so if I'm going to make a Nintendo game, I figured I'd make the worst Nintendo game ever. But it's not just about games. All these skills of programming, game design, artistry to the point that I can kind of do pixel art, it helps you in other industries also. And so locally, I got to work with the Pulitzer Arts Foundation to help build a museum exhibit about the Dakota African burial figures. There's a schematic of one posted in the bottom. They're an artistic piece. There are tons of them buried around. A lot of them have been pillaged and stolen by other cultures. But museum curators, anthropologists, they've been gathering them because we want to study them for their cultural value and their artistic quality. And there's a really cool artistic lineage in these that you can trace by the components, the styles that they're made with, the components that they're made with. And so it's because of my game design background that I was asked to help at this museum to create an interactive experience that would help us kind of visualize the history of the artistry behind these figures. And so what we did was we 3D printed the pieces of the figures, and then you can scan them, and they'll build a chart. You can kind of see it in the, in the upper left to show you, hey, this eyepiece and this earpiece appeared during the same time period, or they often appeared on the same figure. And I made this run on the game engine. Working in a museum doesn't mean you have to use some obscure program that isn't used in other industries. And so there's a lot of spillover. If you're a good game designer and maybe you're having a little bit of a hard time finding work on a game, you can still work at a museum. You can still work in the commercial market. Same concept, we have a lot of dialogue in video games. We have a lot of experiments with artificial intelligence. And so I got asked or contracted by a bunch of some very long chain of subsidiaries to help make a talking mailbox for the government. The idea is that someday you'll be able, when you're dropping off your mail and you have questions, you can just talk to the mailbox. Say, when's the mail being picked up? Or what's the cost of shipping on this package? And you can put it on top and it's a scale, so it'll weigh all that kind of stuff. And this was built using the same tech that goes into video games. Things that help you do dialogue trees and branch narrative can actually be used for people who might not have any idea what a video game is. I hope we're getting to the point, though, where generationally everyone knows what a video game is. We had a Nintendo Wii in the White House the last administration, so I think we're hitting a tipping point as far as video game awareness. And so I make games, I can work for the museum, you can use these skills for the government. You can also make some really weird stuff with it. And so I'm a big fan of the alternative controller movement. It's this idea that in games, not all games have to be your standard gamepad with the dual joysticks and the four buttons. That we can design a controller that fits whatever the game is. And so this is an arcade controller I built for a festival last year that replaces the joystick with a fidget spinner. And so the idea is the faster you spin the fidget spinner, the faster your character moves on top of your more traditional arcade buttons. And then just this past weekend at another festival, the Pizza Pop Festival, I showed an electronic Ouija board. It's here. And so the idea is that as you move the planchette, which is like a little heart-shaped thing around, it will light up. And so that ring in the center, it's a series of 12 LEDs. And so the lights can portray direction, the colors can portray mood, you can show all kinds of patterns. And so those, the board itself with the letters is lined with NFC sensors. And so it can tell where the planchette is lined up. And so what we did is we took a lot of modern tech that's used in like anyone collect the Amiibo figures from like the Nintendo Switch and all that thing? The Toys or Skylanders, maybe you have kids who are obsessed with that. We're using modern gaming tech like that kind of the taboo, mysterious idea of a spirit board. And then we hooked up an old 1970s style text adventure to this thing. And so the idea is that you and 5 friends are trapped in a haunted house, and the only way to escape is to converse with the spirits. And so it's entirely conversational. You never actually say, I want to pick up the key. But the spirit might say, oh, there's a key behind that hidden path. And so, classic narrative, but it's a fun design problem to say, how do I write purely in conversation without the standard game tropes of, jump or push A to open or type out give or grab. And so those are some of the experiments I've been working on. So I'm a big fan of this idea that game design is definitely not done. We're discovering new genres every day. We're designing new controllers every year. Not just for fun stuff like this, but also for accessibility. Going back a little bit, this exhibit, the Pulitzer Arts Foundation is frequently visited by a patron who is blind. And so most of the time he has someone touring him around to describe the art pieces to him. And because we 3D printed these, because of course you're not going to be able to rub your hands on a centuries-old burial figure, he was able to feel the exhibit for the first time. And the look in his eyes to finally experience something like that, and to know that games are starting to do that with controls that are built for people with one hand, or for people who are missing fingers, or for people who have to play using other limbs that they have. I think we're reaching a certain point where game design is really crossing over with these androids in terms of ergonomics and accessibility. So those are the kinds of games I'm interested in making. Things that explore culture, things that open up games to people who didn't think they could play games. And definitely the narrative side. Games that tell stories in a more interactive or deeper way than movies or books can. Also mentioned that I teach locally, so I teach at Maryville, Webster, and Washington University in the area. And this is a big deal, not for me in terms of like, oh, cool, I'm a teacher, but the idea that universities are teaching games. These are such new programs that most of the time, the students that I have, they've been attending that school longer than the program has been around. Oftentimes when these games programs pop up, it's like 2 years into their degree. And someone in there, one of their professors or one of the faculty says, hey, I heard you talk and maybe I heard that you like games and you're interested in this. You should try testing out this new class that we have. So games, it's a really young industry in the big picture, 60s or 70s, depending on what we consider as the first games. And then it's even younger as far as being treated as a legitimate academic study. And that makes it also tough to find teachers because most of the time I'll be sitting in the classroom helping someone out and no one has any idea that the teacher is in the classroom. They assume I'm just one of the other students. Because teachers come in all shapes and sizes, but in games it's even more diverse because you don't know what to expect. So that's my background. Let's go into actually trying to make a game. So what do you need? I'm going to give you a list in a second. The cool thing about this list is that it's all quote-unquote free. Free to start, as in you could literally get started right now. If you have a laptop and the internet's fast enough, you could possibly follow along. I'm going to skip through a few parts for time purposes, but it's free. The points where it might not be free is like when you actually try to sell something, then it might not be free anymore because these companies might want to do that. But if you want to make games, usually people start out with a game engine. Unless you have a very good computer science background, usually you're going to build off of a game engine. The game engine is basically like, I guess to use an analogy here, we've all written letters or essays or something for school. A game engine is like a word processor, just like Microsoft Word, or PageMaker, or Pages, or Lotus, or whatever you use. It's analogous to the typewriter. You don't have to build a typewriter, you can just go straight to writing. You need a code editor. Sometimes this is built into the game engine. Other times you can use your own. Oftentimes it's as simple as just any text editor. Notepad, TextPad, whatever comes with it. Better code editors will highlight stuff for you and also tell you when you're doing something wrong. You need an idea. It really helps to kind of have an interest and know what you're making. I've run into some people, especially in the school setting, where they take the game design class because they're like, oh, I want a game design job. You know, do you like games? They're like, no. Do you have any game ideas? No. It helps to have an idea because your sense of taste is very important as a game designer. There are not a lot of right answers. In game design, there's very few situations where someone says that's right or that's wrong. It kind of depends on your gut, and it depends on you finding players to test for you. And then you need content. You need stuff to actually put in your game. And so if you're an artist, awesome, you can make your own content. Otherwise, you might need to pair up with someone, or you might need to make a placeholder art or borrow a placeholder art. But the gist is you can get started for free. You really can do this. You can do it today. I'm going to point out something very important, though. I say all these are free, and they are. I want to pay special attention to this idea. Ideas are free, so you just make them up, right? The flip side of that is they're kind of worth nothing. You just have to go to like Reddit.com or any video game forum, and you will be inundated with ideas. And every time I tell someone, oh, I make games, or I teach games, they want to tell me the best video game idea in the world. As if my whole entire life had been leading up to meeting this one person who had the best idea secret, and they were waiting just to meet me. Chances are your idea is worth nothing until you actually turn it into something, which is why it's so important to say if you love games and you want to make games, don't just say it. You should actually put some effort into making it, even if it's just a prototype. So step one, we're going to do a very basic step-by-step game. Ron's first step is to design the thing. What are you making? To some extent, you can kind of just make games and see what happens. That's actually my favorite thing to do. Not everyone likes this style, but it works a lot in the classroom. There are a lot of events that are geared toward like improvisational game design, where you just go with the flow and an artist tosses you a mushroom, you just make a game out of it, sort of thing. But we're going to plan some of this out. Usually won't play. All games have what is called the core loop. That is something that the game cycles through constantly. You may have started noticing, like if you're a film person, and maybe you've heard that comment that all films have the same 11 plots, or something like that. It's kind of similar for games. All games have a very similar core loop. There are variations, but all games, they start with an input. You have to push a button. If the game doesn't have an input, you might be watching a movie that looks like a dream. I don't know. You have to be able to provide input. That input triggers some kind of action. So Mario, if I push the, I don't know if it's A or B, one of those buttons, Mario will jump. But, okay, you're empowered to do something cool. But what's the point? Well, there are obstacles. So I have a button I can push, it makes Mario jump. Now there's got to be a hole in the ground. Where's all there? Now there's a point to jump in. Usually 2 and 3, they balance each other. If you have an action, and like, if the action is jumping, the obstacle was starvation, this is a game that doesn't make sense yet. Something's missing. Like Mario can jump until he starves. That does not sound fun. So usually these two pair together. That's some people just define that as a key point. Like I said, there aren't a lot of purely right answers in game design. I know people who will argue with you for days what the word mechanic means, but that's not my goal. And so you have a bunch of actions. You're going to do it to overcome all kinds of obstacles, and the game is going to build up to some kind of big reason. And that's your goal. Hopefully it's a good reason. Some games can have a bit more complication. And it loops. That's core loops. So whether you're on the first screen of Mario or the last screen, you're still pushing buttons, you're still jumping until the day it goes forever. So the game I'm gonna walk you through really quickly. I'm gonna switch the buttons around. This is one of the core loops from Myst. You click, that's the kind of input you provide to this game. Unless you played one of the console versions, you probably weren't pushing any buttons. You click to move around. And really the obstacle is kind of figuring out where you're going. And the goal is to get to the end, whatever that might be. And there are other core loops. Myst has a puzzle solving mode. Whether it is collecting items, whether it is your own logical reasoning to figure out those puzzles. And so games have multiple loops, but I'm just going to focus on one. So this is step one, design. Figure out your loop. And there are other loops. There's core loops, there are feedback loops. there are power loops, there are skill loops, all kinds of tools that we as game designers, we kind of go through these tools. Like, okay, my game has a core loop. Does it have this other loop? And then we test, does it have this other loop? But I'm just going to focus on one with you all, because I don't have that much time with you. Okay, step 2, let's gather some content. So I said, okay, I'm going to figure out how can we very quickly make a Myst-style game. Not a full game, just a few screens. Myst, part of what I love about Myst games is just looking at the map. Because looking at the maps, especially like a top view, it tells you a story. It shows you all these mysterious things that, like, okay, is there a puzzle in there? Is there an item in there? How do I get over there? And so I love maps. And I feel like part of that started with trying to chart out, what had I seen already. And so, especially if you're visiting St. Louis for the first time, I highly recommend you check out the Missouri Botanical Gardens. One of the highest rated botanical gardens, not just in the nation, also in the world. And so what I did was, I didn't exactly have time before here to go around taking snapshots to do a point-and-click adventure of the gardens. So I kind of cheated. I used Google Maps. They have like that street view. Well, someone was nice enough to walk through the gardens, and there's a Google Street View of the Missouri Botanical Gardens. I still suggest you go there yourself, but I did like a virtual walkthrough using Google Street View, and I took some screenshots of that. And so that's step 2. That's kind of me doing pre-production, gathering content. I don't want you to think that you only gather art on step 2, because sometimes you keep making art during the middle of your game also, as you discover new ideas or you find that you need to make revisions. So that's step 2, gather some content. Step 3 is to develop it. I guess it's later in the day, but this picture doesn't resonate as much as it might. We haven't talked about this stuff in but I'm going to show you a bit of development in a second, but I just want to complete this picture. And then there's step 4, which is basically the 1, 2, 3, 4 I just gave you. Is you start with an idea and you design it. Something inspires this. Maybe it's inspiration from your own creativity, your own imagination, maybe something from the outside, but you always start with an idea. You design it, you do some planning, and you do some pre-production. In this case, that was me gathering pictures before I came to visit you. And you create the thing. And that's a very broad word, because games, they can take anywhere from 1 person to like 500 people, and 48 hours to 10 years, depending on the game. So there's a very big bucket I put right here. And then, most important of all, you play test it. Because if no one ever sees your game, you will never truly know if it's good. And this is a cycle, it's a loop. The feedback you get from your playtesters has to inform your next idea. So we're gonna hop in a game engine right now and try to mix some stuff up, and hopefully nothing goes wrong. Like I said, I do have called game dev all the time in front of my classes and stuff almost always goes wrong. This is the Unity game engine. You don't have to use this one. I use this one because most of my contracts just happen to be this engine. I'm going to give you a list of other engines near the end. But this is just something I like to use. I'm quick with it because I just the experience that I have. And like I said, I did some pre-production. I stole some pictures from online of the botanical garden. So we're going to hook those up. Just let's see, 4 different locations, same pictures, because in this, when you go from location to location, you're kind of jumping through nodes. The classic point-and-click one, you'll jump to another spot, and then you'll jump to another spot. I don't remember if, how many of you went to like Myst 1, the original Myst? Not even real Myst. Okay, how many of you like, I think it was Myst 3, they started doing the spherical view? Yeah. How many of you kind of prefer that? Oh, not too many? Okay. And then they started going like full real-time rendering where it was like a first-person adventure where you could walk around, and now they added the VR modes on a bunch of different shots. So I'm going for the point-and-click style right now, though, just so you know. So most game engines, they're all different, but there are also some patterns. Most game engines, they have some kind of stage where you put your stuff. And it is a stage. It's totally analogous to like a play or a movie stage. This is where the stuff happens. And there is actually a virtual camera looking around at the thing. We're going to do this to you though, just to simplify. Most game engines have a way of telling you what's in the scene. So stuff is at the scene, then you've got this hierarchy on the left. So right now my scene just has a camera, and then there are details, the stuff about the camera. And this is a simulated camera, so it's going to have stuff like the viewport, the depth, the size, what's in the background. If I were in 3D mode, I would have a lot more stuff about field of view, things like that. But again, 2D is simple. Most game engines will have a window like here on the bottom that tells you what's in your project. And so I am just going to drag, I'm going to make a folder for graphics. And really this is kind of up to you how you want to organize your stuff. I'm going to make a folder called graphics, and I'm going to drag in my pictures. So now I have these 8 pictures from the botanical gardens. If you want to close to a view, let's take a picture. I also don't know. Just an example. Off of Google Maps. They're not the best quality. It's not like I had an awesome DSLR camera myself. And so I'm going to lay out different scenes and we're going to jump into them. So I'm going to call this view 1, and this will be. So when you make games, a lot of game engines, they split them into 3 kinds of views, 3 kinds of existence. There's like the parts of the game that are